Welcome. Welcome to another episode of The Impact of AI, sponsored by AI Time Journal and supported by women leaders in data and artificial intelligence. For those of you whom I've not met, my name's Melissa Drew, and I'll be your host for this week's episode. This week, we have Kate Bradley Chernis. She is the CEO of Lately.ai. Now, Lately.ai is a application. It's a service. It infuses AI in order to create social media content. And I'll leave it there because I know that we'll be spending time with Kate later to really dive in deep into what is really being utilized and the value that this is bringing to really anybody that uses it. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Melissa. You have an amazing voice, by the way. Do people tell you this?
No.
You know, I know this because I used to be in radio, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And so I really respond to voices, and I want more of yours. Soothing, great, commanding, all the things. I loved it.
So I look at people's LinkedIn pages and some nuances that I wanted to highlight. You went to Skidmore College for creative writing, and I actually lived in Queensbury, which is about 20 miles north of Saratoga Springs, which is where
Yeah.
Skidmore College is.
Oh
So I
my
was like,
gosh.
I know. I was like, wow, that's like,
No
right
one
on top of
ever
each other.
mentions that. That's incredible.
I don't know if anybody would know where it's at.
Well, that's so let's educate them. So the horse track there, the Saratoga racetrack, is a
Yep.
famous one because the Travers race is the biggest race after the Triple Crown, right? And that happens at Saratoga, and it's also the oldest racetrack in the country. So it's this historical kind of beautiful place. And if you're a Skidmore student, a lot of them work there. I didn't work there, but I certainly learned how to bet on the horses. And I always pick the longest shot possible. Like that tells me something about me, and I don't spend a lot on it, but I did win on an 81-1 horse once.
Oh.
And that felt great. Like I wish I'd bet more money on it, but it was an amazing feeling.
Well, yes. So I have a lot of history there as well. They have a post office inside the racetrack. Did you ever see that? It's like a little
Oh
kiosk.
my gosh. Yes.
It's a
Great.
kiosk, and primarily it's to support the jockeys and who are there well before the horse track race event starts. But there's an individual from the post office that mans that daily, and it has a special stamp that people typically come as tourists just to get the post office to stamp a letter, because you only get to see that stamp during that 6-week time frame. Yeah.
That's incredible. I did not know that. I'm
Yeah.
going to, obviously I have to do that next time I go.
Yeah. But you all already mentioned it, that you're a former rock and roll DJ. And I love this. You served 20 million listeners as music director and an on-air host with Sirius XM, which is why you have made the comment about the voice.
It's true. My friend Lisa Thee referred to it as a recovering rock and roll DJ, which I thought was so great because there certainly was some trauma, to it. But I loved every second of it. I mean, so parallel, when I was in Saratoga, instead of working for the track, what I did was I worked the line in restaurants all through actually high school and college, middle school, high school, and college. And in Toga, the restaurant I worked at was the first one on the way back from the track in the town. And so we got the crush of the dinner rush first, right? And I held the record with my other line cook, Doug, for turning the most covers in a single night on Travers. And the reason I'm sharing this is because there's a lawlessness of radio. There's a lawlessness of being in the kitchen. And there's a lawlessness of running a startup, which clearly, I love. I love it all, right?
But that's perfect, because that's a great segue into the journey that you've had, radio, creative writing, and you've now been the CEO of Lately.ai for about 8 years now. Is that correct? Yeah, a little over 8 years. What was the inspiration? Yeah, what was the inspiration to that?
Thank you for asking. It's so funny because a lot of women I know are afflicted by this, which is we don't even realize we're doing something great in the moment. And usually for me, someone else has to come along and, notice this for me, be like, hello. And so that was the case really with Lately. I had, after I was in radio, I moved on to owning a marketing agency. And my first client was a little company, called Walmart. And I built the Walmart project, a spreadsheet system that ended up getting us 130% ROI year over year for 3 years. And as I was, involved and overwhelmed with my own spreadsheets, a friend came along and kept asking to see them because by now I using them for all my clients because, hey, they work, right? And it was this idea of repurposing content, really. So along the Gary V pillar before Gary V, sorry, Gary, we're friends. And noticing what, so many of us notice, which is marketing is hard, writing is harder. People often hate writing. They're pawning it off to consultants or agencies to do it, and like me at that time. And there's this real blocker about the fear of the blank page. Like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? And even more challenging, like, what's the right thing to drive leads or to create engagement? So that friend was like, we can make software out of this spreadsheet system you got here. We just need to find $25,000 and build some wireframes. And Melissa, these were words I didn't ever know what they meant. It was like, yeah, and so first of all, $25,000. I worked in radio. I've been eating ramen and $2 chuck, right? And I was like, that's crazy. And I was buying my first house, which is where my savings were going. And then, the wireframes, for those who don't know, are really like a skeleton of what a website would look like. So this is Steve, who became my co-founder. Steve pulled together the money from his own pocket and brought in another one of my co-founders now, Jason. It was a Sunday, Melissa. It was a Sunday after Christmas at 8:00 at night. I was so pissed at them because I had 2 glasses of wine going. It's Christmas break. I'm like, why are you bothering me? I'm on vacation, And they showed me what they built. And after that, Steve said I was much nicer to him. Because I got it.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so funny too, like as we were going, I remember that January, we're trying to set up things and think of names of the company and all these ridiculous things you have to do in the beginning. And I said to him, the most important thing is that I'm the boss. And Steve, that little sucker. So, he had come from venture world. He had he's a serial entrepreneur. He'd had a successful exit and some not successful ones too, but he knew what I was getting into. And he was like, no problem. I want nothing to do with that. Yikes. But I survived, like I like to joke that as CEO, you get punched in the face every single day. And clearly I love it because I'm still here, right?
I know that there's always a much larger conversation around startups and just the early stages, but I want to focus on the application itself because you've built this over the course of up till now 8 years and going. But what I saw was that you've really applied the artificial intelligence and keep in mind, people are just now really talking about AI, but you've been using AI for quite some time now in your services. And I'd love to get into a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks. It's so funny because again, at first we actually didn't know we were building AI. Someone had to point this out to us, right? Mm-hmm. Which is so interesting. And we were watching the customers use the product. So we built a product that had every spreadsheet I had created for Walmart became a feature. And so it was a very robust, full service marketing platform and really focused on social media, but we had included some PR stuff and comm stuff as well, because that's where the Walmart project had, came from. And those are the people I was working with. And we saw customers really use one feature a lot, and that was the auto generator. So just so folks kind of know how it works. So lately, at a high level, we have 5 years of our own machine learning and proprietary data, but we also integrate with the best AI technologies in the world. We were part of the GPT-3 beta when it was closed, right? Now it's open. So we were early users there. IBM Watson Meeting Cloud, and Pegasus. I don't think I forgot anything, hopefully not. So knowing that, that's the high level. The layman's terms is, or laywoman's terms, is you connect your social accounts to Lately, any ones you want, as many as you want. And we instantly study all the analytics from every post you've published in the last year. And through the analytics, we're looking at the words and the phrases and the ideas and the sentence structures that made up the messages that got you the highest engagement. Now that we have that, we have a writing model. We have a writing model that we know works. Once we have the writing model, you can then feed the AI. So it's a two-part process: build the writing model, then feed it long form content. And the long form content can be a video, like one we're recording at this moment, or a video from a conference, an interview with someone at the company, anything like that. It could be any audio file also, and it could be any text file. So it could be chapters of a book, or you could take a URL and just paste it in from a blog or a website, or copy any Word document content. And then you push a button and the auto generator gets to work by applying the writing model to the long form content. So in the case of a video like this, it instantly transcribes it, reads the transcription, pulls out the quotes that meet the writing model criteria, and then also attaches the video clips up of whoever said those quotes, right? So now you have dozens of lead generators or mini movie trailers designed to drive traffic back to the full length version.
I did have an opportunity to really explore your application and services last year with a friend of mine who was interested, and exactly what you've described. She uploaded an article and she uploaded a video. And what was really fascinating was the results. It gave her a list of, I can't even remember, it was like 39 different little micro postings, very focused. And then over time, it learned based on what she was posting and the scheduling. And that was the piece that I thought was so brilliant, because the primary purpose of, and I feel like I'm your sales advocate now, but the primary purpose of why she was interested was she was paying somebody full time to do exactly what your application does. And that's where I want to lead this next question into is, we all hear a lot about AI is going to take over, people's roles and responsibilities, but I think this is one where it maybe would be an advantage, especially to a small business or startup, or even companies where marketing budgets are always getting smaller and tighter, even with larger, retail consumer good firms. But here's an opportunity where you could take a person and maybe move them into a more strategic role. And instead of using them tactically, this is where I think, your application comes into play. So the feedback or the insights that I'd like to hear from you is, do you get a lot of pushback when people look at this and say, oh, it's replacing my internal team members?
We get some, certainly, of course, because AI is new and people have to, understand it, and they immediately put you in a box, right? And that's normal. So, either people right away get it and they're like, oh my God, and their eyeballs pop out of their head a little bit. But what's really important, and we differentiate ourselves from any other contextual or content creation AI in this way, which is we require human activity as part of the secret sauce, right? So Lately, as you said, it learns from everything you do, every word you edit, every post you choose to publish or you don't publish, every single emoji you add to it, every hashtag. And there's multiple opportunities for you, the human, to constantly guide the AI, because it's a robot. I mean, it is, right? This is part of the deal. And we also know something else, Melissa, which is, it's hard to describe, but it's so important. So this is how the radio ties in, by the way. So forgive me, I'm gonna go on a tangent, all right? So when you listen to a new song, your brain must instantly access every other song it's ever heard before. This is the neuroscience of music. And in that moment, your brain is looking for familiar touch points within the new song, so it knows where to index it in the library of the memory of your mind, right? So again, in a quick moment of listening to a new song, you've got nostalgia, memory, emotion, all these things coming forth, which makes music so powerful. Also, all the things that have to be in place for trust to happen. And trust is why we buy, right? So now that you know that, you think about writing. So if you write me a text or a social media post or an email, your voice, like a song, has a frequency. There's a musical note to all sound, right? So I hear your voice in my head. And it's your job as the author to give me those familiar touch points and trigger nostalgia, emotion, memory, and trust, right? So, I was a fiction writing major, as we talked about. I've wrote thousands of commercials for radio. My uber power is turning listeners into fans or customers into evangelists, because the thing I know about is theater of the mind. And that's why I listened to your voice. I was loving your voice, because the theater of the mind requires a third character, an unknown character. It's a human. It's the imagination, right? And as a great author or a great radio host, you have to allow space for that character to participate in the conversation, but to be guided by you. And it's the same thing with Lately's AI, right?
You want to go a little further into
Does that sound wacky?
No, I feel like you were about to tell us more. So it's the same thing as Lately AI
and so this is why, we try to communicate to people how important that human participation is, because it's not just the act of guiding the AI, right? Like, and let me back this up. So Gary Vaynerchuk launched an entire Twitter channel using Lately and nothing else but Lately. We got him a 12,000% increased engagement, and there was an 80% parallel between the posts our AI shows and his human team, for example. Another proof point here is at Lately, we don't do any paid ads. We don't do any cold calls or cold emails. We only use Lately to market Lately. I'm going to ask you for this file. Hopefully you'll give it to me. I'll run it through my AI. It's going to know what part of this show to pick out, create your social post. My human team will augment it. And then it's so good at figuring out what our customers want to read, watch, or hear that we have a 98% sales conversion, okay? And the reason we have all this, it's the AI is doing the meat of the work, but there's a human pushing it along, right? So it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 5, right? Because those numbers, 98%, 12,000%, that's not just it's not just about a robot plus manual labor. It's about that je ne sais quoi, the theater of the mind, the human.
So the 98% and the 12,000 that you just referenced, I'm guessing that if this was 1 to 5 individuals, trying to reap that type of reward would be extremely difficult, if not impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I did it by hand for $140,000 over 9 months for Walmart. Mm-hmm. Right? It was really hard back in the day, but nothing was learning from me, of course. This is a human. And now that we have a couple of other secret sauces, right, that make it impossible to replicate, because the AI has multiple databases. So if we don't, say, for example, you don't have a substantial Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever account for us to learn from, the AI kicks in and pulls from me my best practices first. And then it pulls from my brand best practices next, Lately's actual social posts. And then it pulls from the data of all of our customers and their best practices. Yeah.
Okay, so that actually answers the question I was going to ask, because a lot of times when you're utilizing the AI and you're looking at the learning models, we always talk about prospective data and retrospective data. So what you're doing is you're funneling all of the content that your knowledge base, let's just say. So it's your knowledge base plus any of the knowledge that you've accumulated over the course of the 8 years. And
Yeah,
that's the starting point for someone who doesn't have their own, long history of patterns that could be pulled from.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we also just for all the nerds in the room. So we expanded upon this idea. We did a little pilot project with Anheuser-Busch InBev, and what we did was we took 10,000 pieces of content. So that's a lot. The brain needs to learn from a lot of things. And it was written content that came in the form of either social posts or press release or even scripts to radio commercials. We were focused on one brand and trying to make sure that AI could learn that single brand voice and then recreate it on its own. And it worked. So the idea was, or the experiment was, you push a button, you type in some key ideas. So in this case, it was soccer, World Cup, and women in beer. And then the AI would go find articles that had something to do with that. We used an integration with our friends at Up Content to do this part of it. And then once it found the articles, it would read them and create social posts that were not quotes with the brand voice. So I'll give you an example. We tried it again with my own content. I say goofy things online, Melissa, because so in real life, I like to swear like a sailor. I have a filthy mouth. So I try to buffer that with things, silly things like jump in Jehoshaphat, holy hot pickled jalapenos, or hold on to your bagels or whatever. And so what the AI did with my social post was add in hashtags that were ridiculous like that. So this is our V2, which we're in the process of integrating into the product now.
That's great. So that's actually a perfect segue into what does the future look like? You've been building this, developing it. It sounds like it's very successful. I see, for companies, especially in marketing, advertising, that are really focused on those value-based outcomes, very focused on the metrics and the KPIs. This sounds like it's something that really would resonate with them. But what's next? Where is this all going?
Yeah, so two things. I want to answer your question and then touch on a thought I had as you're saying that, which is, we're focused on the words that matter, right? Mm-hmm. Which was important to me because what I saw with the Walmart project, which by the way was Walmart and all their franchises, AT&T and all of theirs, Bank of America and all of theirs, the IRS, United Way Worldwide, and the National Disability Institute. So small, medium, large companies, for-profit, nonprofit, government. There were 20,000 marketers or people involved altogether, right? Which is a long way of saying everybody. And what I saw was this proclivity to get caught up in the numbers and not really understand the numbers anyways, right? So that was part of my job, is like pulling together hundreds of thousands of pieces of data from all of these people to understand what was working and what wasn't. And it kept coming down to words, which messaging do we use? And so Lately's AI surfaces word clouds for this purpose. So you can literally click on each one and see how much engagement that word generates for you, or that idea, at a time. So to answer your question, like what's next? Our initial goal was to get you 75% of the way there with writing social copy. God darn it, people want more. It's like not enough. They're like, oh, so what? Are you kidding me? This is like 8 years of work. It's really hard to do, So that V2 is part of getting you 90% of the way there, right? That's a real goal of ours, and doing it in a way that we can keep the human as part of the equation, right? Because like, boy, some people really don't even want that. They want to push a button, walk away, and never think about it again, which to me, Melissa, I mean, people self-included, we're lazy, right? Like, and there's this black box of mystery around marketing specifically, right? So imagine when you buy QuickBooks software and you sit down to use QuickBooks, you sit down to do some work, right? But people want to just sit down with marketing software and do no work. And you're like, well, it doesn't work that way, you know? I mean, it's not magic. It's not. So, you know, in the other part of like what comes next is mindset shift, right? How do we get people to not hate it, not hate marketing, not hate writing, to find joy in it? I mean, there's something of a game at Lately when you push the button to see what happens, right? It's fun, you know? But then the other mindset shift is around, and forgive me for being long-winded, radio DJ, is around conferences and this idea that everything has to be in the moment and live in pre with marketing, promotion, where it's changed now. It's after the fact, right? Because people binge when they want to, they watch when they want to, they listen when they want to. And marketing is still thinking that we're kind of old school. We haven't really caught up to marketing in the after fact, right? And the reason that's so powerful is because you get the long tail. It's what I learned in radio. The long tail is exponentially more powerful at driving traffic back to this show than if we were promoting this show, it's airing tomorrow, right? So much harder to get butts in seats than to get the eyeballs, you know, later on. So I'm curious. I'm seeing the mind shift happen a little bit. Like COVID did light it up because obviously we're less live, you know. So I'm watching and wondering, and the people who get it are our customers, you know, and our partners.
You don't really do a lot of advertising. I've noticed when I went to research this. So
Yeah,
you've grown purely organically. Is that correct?
purely organically. I've spent $0 on marketing, and well, I experimented with Facebook like 6 years ago, and then said, "F this, my own stuff is better than this," and it was. And yeah, I mean, we have just under 400 customers. I grew the company 240% in monthly recurring revenue in COVID, actually, and it was all word of mouth. I mean, you know, from meeting my team, one thing we triple down on, quadruple down on is humans. Back to this idea, right? So like, my people are nice. They want to get to know you. They're interested in knowing you. We spend a lot of time, all of us, everybody, even my engineers, on social media. That's hard to get my engineers to retweet something, but they do it, you know? And we're interested in changing that dynamic because, again, the hard way is the way, Melissa. I don't know how to say it any different, right? Humans are required. The hard way is the way. This is and it's because it's the difference between turning listeners into fans, customers into evangelists. You can throw money at the problem, or you can actually just roll your sleeves up and do it yourself, right?
So Kate, you are, you know, we've noted that you are the CEO of Lately.ai. It is a AI-driven application. And one of the things that we're still emphasizing and advocating is women in AI, women in data science, women in AI, and you've got all of this, you know, underneath you. What are you doing to help kind of expand that conversation?
It's not easy. You know, what I'm a lot of this, by the way, just like finding women like you, asking to be on your showcase, and using the opportunity to lift others up. You're lifting me up, right? We can only climb up to wherever it is we want to go if others help out. And it has to be from people who are already on top, right? I mean, that's just part of any deal, any evolution or growth. One of the things I find to be most valuable is to be really real, to the point of my parents might be embarrassed for me, because it's validating when you know someone else came from where you are, right? And you know, so on the one side, Melissa, I'm in a world where many of the women went to Harvard or Wharton or somewhere wonderful like that, where I went to Skidmore, which is a great school. I don't even own a suit jacket. I mean, I don't, right? And I just come from a place where I was a line cook and a rock and roll DJ and a rock climber. And I was a goalkeeper in soccer, right? There's nothing dainty about where I come from. I'm not saying that people are dainty, but just as a contrast, right? And I think it's important for women and anyone to know, or underdogs in general, that they don't have to have all that fancy stuff, to get to where I am. And at the same time, you do need help, though. I mean, I hate the word need, because need is needy, but this takes a village every single day. I either ask for help from one of my investors or advisors or my team, or I'm going to my therapist later, right? Or I'm trying to give help in some way I can. Now, my schedule is tight and it's hard to find those times, but yesterday I did a mitzvah helping an entrepreneur kind of figure out their deck. I hate doing that, but once in a while, I got to do it. It was me once, and then sometimes it's just talking about super personal things in order to give other people permission, so that either they can talk about them as well, or that it levels the playing field. So I'll give you an example. We were on the phone with Hootsuite recently. We have a great partnership with them, and we were demoing them, me and Lauren, my COO. And before the call, we were in the Zoom, as our Zoom, they came on, and we're just talking about regular things, like Lauren's washing machine died, and her husband throws the coffee pot in the sink all the time. It's annoying to her. I get that. We're just complaining about these things. And they were so delighted. They're like, wow, this is a CEO and a COO.
You're normal.
Just normal. We're normal. Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. The fact that somebody sees me as in any way that wouldn't be normal is shocking to me. And in fact, most of the time, I don't even, like, when you read my bio, I'm like, who's that? Who's she talking about? I have a card that I got it to send it to myself. I don't know who I'm going to send it to, but it says, my fashion senses didn't think I'd have to get out of the car.
I understand. I actually understand that. Yes.
So funny. But anyway, so that's my secondary mission in this life, which is, for some reason, Lately doesn't do what I want it or expect it to do, then, damn it, I helped some people.
So as we look to wrap up, I do want to thank you for your time, but I'd like to follow up with one last question, continuing the conversation that we're having now. There are other women who are behind the scenes developing these AI technologies, not quite ready yet to go out to public or production. What are some leave behind thoughts that you have to help them?
Well, don't listen to anyone who's telling you anything negative whatsoever. I mean, just don't. You just have to have blinders on, even if it feels like you're being an idiot, frankly. I mean, there's no other way to survive unless you're just doing it. And everyone wants to give you advice. That's why it's free, right? And so I find all that noise and that there's lots of people I love around me and do respect, but if I took all of their advice, I would be stuck in analysis paralysis, right? So sometimes you just have to take none and do what's in your gut. And that's the second part of the answer, which is, as women, we have these incredible receptacles where life literally happens, and we don't listen to this gut very often. We shoo it, and it's the first sign of a weather vane of sorts that says to you, you're in the right place at the right time, or get the hell out of here. This is not working. By the way, there's the 3 most powerful words in the English language. This is not working. Once you say it, all the doors open. And so, when you have the ability to listen to the gut, I feel like my shoulders drop, and I'm like, oh God, I know this. It's right here, right? It's right here. You have that aha. moment. And it's very hard to do, Melissa, right? For some
It is.
reason, yeah, you know, we all have this soundtrack going on in our minds that says, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I doubt myself, whatever it is, you know, it is what it is. We're our hardest critics. But anyways, just get out of your own way and let that sucker talk to you.
I like that. Get out of your own way. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you again for your time. I would love to follow up in a year from now because I'm sure things will continue to grow and flourish. And it would be great to do a follow up if you're available.
For sure. I
Yep,
love you. Thank you so much.
absolutely. All right. Thank you.